presentation, if that's okay. So I'm going to just get that, share my screen. I'll get that up here. Let's get that going. Here we go. There we go. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Before we begin, I just want to start with the UCR land acknowledgement, which acknowledges all the people who originally inhabited this land. So the Kuya, the Tongva, the Lisenyo, and the Serrano are the people groups that originally occupied the lands around that UCR sits on. So we want to acknowledge them. And then I have a pop quiz to start us off. So if you want to answer this in the chat, please feel free to post your answers in the chat as to what you think is the correct gender neutral term for my office. So please put your responses in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing some responses from everyone. C, B with a star. That's great. I love the star. I'm curious about what the star is about, but that's great. A lot of B's. Okay, so now I'll tell you what the correct answer is, and that's E. It depends on who you ask. So it's a bit of a trick question because there's a lot of debate within our field about what the correct term is, and we don't agree on it all the time. So the term ombudsman is the original term. It's a Swedish word. And the debate is whether the man in Swedish is gender neutral or gender specific. And I don't speak Swedish, so I don't know. Maybe is there somebody who does speak Swedish? Do we have any Swedes in the crowd who can help clarify this? But honestly, I've spoken with people who do speak Swedish and I've got different answers from them. So some say it is gender neutral and some say it's gender specific. So I don't know, but and even if it is, there's still the question of perception because most people don't speak Swedish. So for the most part, as you can see in my screen, I use the term ombuds, which is still a strange word, right? They're all strange words, but any of these terms, ombudsman, ombuds, or ombudsperson, right, has been used over the course of the history of the Ombuds Office at UCR. It's over 50 years old. They've been used at various times, and I'll answer to all of them. I'll even go with ombuddy, which is, sometimes we have a little ombuddy here in our office, ombuddy bear. Yes, any of those terms will work. So thanks, you're all correct. And so I want to share a little bit about myself. My name is Andrew Larrett-Smith. I'm the ombuds here at UCR. I've been here at UCR for about 10 years. So I'm fairly familiar with the campus by this point. One thing you should know, just to share with you, is I was an international student myself. I'm Canadian. And I probably had a lot of advantages that some of you may not have in navigating the system. But I have had that experience. I'm not a U.S. citizen still. I'm a permanent resident, and I've had some experience. I've been turned away at the border, the U.S. border, before, and I know some of the anxiety that you can experience. And I know too that my experience is probably, I've had a much easier time than many of you have. So I just want to share that that I know there can be challenges that international students have, that many of us aren't aware of or are not attuned to. And so that's why it's so good that UCR has international affairs staff that are really trained and understand the needs that you have as students, international students at UCR. So we just want to know that there's challenges that you may face and that there's a team of folks here that support you. And so I'm glad and grateful for the international office for including me and for just the role that they play on this campus and in supporting your needs as international students. So I want to say a little bit about the role that the Ombuds Office plays. So this is our mission statement, which we strive to humanize the UCR campus, making it a viable and responsible institution of people. So this comes from the letter that was originally created the Ombuds Office in 1968. And I like that language of humanizing the UCR campus and making it viable and responsible. So I think that's really still true today. And that's part of the role that the Ombuds Office plays. And by the way, I'm going to do the presentation today, and then we'll have a chance if you've got questions to answer questions. But if you've got questions as we go along, please feel free to either post those in the chat or raise your hand or speak up. I'm happy to address those as we go along. Here's the different ways that we help support this mission. The main way is we available for confidential consultations. So you can come and talk with me. It's a small office. It's usually me. It's me primarily in the Ombuds office. But if you've got a concern that's bothering you, something that you're not sure where to go, what to do, especially thorny, concerns that you have that relate to your time here at UCR. And we serve the whole campus community. So that's staff, students, faculty, anybody with a UCR related concern. And it's confidential, very confidential. The only exception is if there's an imminent threat of serious physical harm, which is really narrow exception, right? So there's a high degree of confidentiality, which can be very important for some people, especially depending on the type of situation that they're encountering. That's the primary thing that we do. The other thing we do is we facilitate dialogue or other informal processes to help conversations if people are in conflict and they want to sit down and try to work it out. We're available to serve as a third-party mediator to help people talk things through or work through their conflict. That's only if everybody agrees. It's never required that anybody participate in that. It's got to be a totally voluntary commitment. The third is we provide educational resources and workshops around conflict, communication, fairness, those sorts of things. So if you've got an interest in some of those topics, I'm happy to provide resources if, sometimes for student groups or for departments, some resources on how do we improve our campus climate and engage in a way that's fair and ethical. And then finally, I provide feedback to administrators if there's patterns or trends or issues that I'm seeing that I think could impact other students or other people, to try to encourage positive change so that situations don't reoccur. Often when I hear people come to me, a very common concern is, I don't want to see this happen to somebody else. And so that's part of our role, is without violating confidentiality, without identifying who it's coming from, unless we have permission, to be able to surface those issues to people in the administration and try to help them address them and shift the system. So that's the basic mission statement. Are there any questions at this point? Maybe I'll just pause quickly to see if there's anybody got any questions thus far. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Oh, somebody raised your hand. Pertub?
Hello, Andrew. So my question is how this consultation, the first point, is like different from the consultation being offered by the health department and the psychology section. So it says consult confidentially. Like how exactly it is different from those kind of consultations?
That's great. So you're talking about the counseling center and those kinds of resources. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, so they also offer some kind of consultation to the students, and so my question is how that is different from this one.
That's a really good question. So typically as the ombuds, what I'm working with are people who have UCR related concerns. So they're usually concerns that relate to interactions with other people or with the administration, right, with the campus. So often, the mental health services or the counseling are often trying to help students who are navigating personal difficulties, right? And so there may be more internally focused, whereas our focus is pretty external in terms of interactions with the campus. Now there may be some overlap there, so it's not but that's our primary focus. So my background, just so you know, I'm not a practicing attorney, but my background is law and conflict resolution. So really looking at trying to address issues of conflict or fairness, as opposed to I'm not a therapist, right? So I do listen, but that would be the distinction. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Great question. Thank you for asking it. Okay. I'm going to keep moving here. And if you've got other questions, please do feel free to ask them, and we'll have a chance at the end. Also, these are the 4 principles that undergird the whole process. The main one I've already emphasized is confidentiality, but another is informality, in that we're not a formalized process. So there are complaint mechanisms on campus, formalized complaint mechanisms. Often people come to the Ombuds office and I'll help them think through whether they want to utilize those and how. So we'll help people into those processes, but we ourselves do not conduct investigations or oversee any of those complaint mechanisms or discipline mechanisms, but we're often working with people who are encountering them. So that's something you can be aware of if you're encountering it. So this can come up in terms of, and with international students, frankly, sometimes there's like academic integrity issues is one that can come up for students who are accused of plagiarism or some sort of academic integrity violation. So I work with students to help navigate that and respond to those systems. We don't participate directly in that, but we're available to help people consult confidentially about that. Our role is to be impartial, so I can't be an advocate for any individual or entity. What I can advocate for, and that includes the university itself, I don't advocate for UCR. What I can advocate for is fair process or other similar principles or ideals, that things are being done in a fair way. And then the final principle is that we're functionally independent. So I get paid by the university, so I'm not financially independent, but that's why the structure's in place, is to create some independence, some distance from other campus functions. This is just over time, you can see who's utilized the Ombuds Office. And you can see it's really a broad cross-section of people from across the campus. You'll notice these red numbers, these reddish numbers are students. So there's a good percentage of folks, both that's undergraduate and graduate students. And you can see there's a good percentage of graduate students in particular, right? There's a much bigger undergraduate population, and yet the number of graduate students coming to use the office is almost as high as the undergraduate students. And that's because there's a lot more challenges in a lot of ways for graduate students than undergraduates in terms of how they're placed within the university. But this is the folks we've served over time. This is another pie chart, just giving you a sense of the percentage breakdown in those 5 years. We don't have I haven't updated with the latest year's data, but that gives you a sense of who's using the office again. And then, so here are some concerns for undergraduates, and then I'll talk about graduate students as well. They're different by constituent group. And let me I'm putting the list up, and then I'll highlight a few that I think are particularly relevant for international students. One is housing. Housing is a common concern that international students can run into, just challenges with leases, et cetera. So I've seen a number of housing issues over time. And then student disciplinary processes that I mentioned before, in terms of sometimes there's different expectations about what academic integrity looks like, and that can be culturally contextualized. And so sometimes there can be a learning and adapting to like an American expectation of what that is. I've seen international students end up in some of those disciplinary processes. The other thing is some of these disciplinary processes are tough to navigate for anyone, right, who's unfamiliar with them. But I see there's an even bigger gap for international students, because some of it is navigating the culture of the American university institution and understanding it. And so it can sometimes it's harder or a greater challenge for international students, and there's a greater gap. And that's one of the things as the ombuds I try to do is help level the playing field so that somebody going through the process can gain as much expertise and understanding of the process as those who are overseeing the process every day, right? Because there's a big information gap and power gap there. And that's particularly true for international students. And then here are some of the, for graduate students, some of the issues, common issues. And I'll say a lot of these are just as true for international students as for others. But again, the power dynamics can be even more because potentially the outcomes when students are concerned about their visas and they're, they've made a commitment to be here. And if they're having a conflict with an advisor in the lab, the stakes can feel higher for international students, right? And so that's why even the same issues, there can be a differential impact, and it's really important that graduate students have the resources to be able to navigate through these. And it's quite difficult if there is a conflict with a PI and how you navigate that and what you do with it. It's a challenging situation to encounter. So, and also fees and funding. Sometimes there's different challenges for international students. There has been over the years. Some of those have been resolved. I have to say that I've seen fewer of those in recent years, so I'm glad to report that because there's been efforts to try to narrow that gap. But still, there can be this time to degree and degree progress and how that impacts and with your funding. There's can be, because of just the way the funding works for international students, can be greater challenges there. So those are a few things to emphasize. And then just finally, when to call the Ombuds Office. And this is just general circumstances in which to call us, right? If there's a concern about unfair treatment, if you really feel like a strong need for confidentiality that's important, a need for conflict resolution, an interest in collaborative dialogue, or something, so you feel like something's falling between the cracks and it's not getting resolved anywhere and you're unsure to go. So those are just sort of some quick circumstances in which to call the Ombuds Office. The other thing I just want to emphasize too is, we're available as a resource, but you've also got a lot of great resources in the International Student Office too. So they're a great place to go. And there's been times where we've referred students back and forth, right, between the different offices where, so I've encouraged students to go to the International Students Office and likewise. So, and we're actually on the same floor, just kitty corner from one another if you ever come here physically. So there's really some great resources there as well too. So I want to emphasize that. That's basically the overview. Does anyone have any questions at this point for me?
I have a question, Andrew.
Great.
So I think sometimes when students get into thorny situations, to use your terminology, there's concern that this situation might have an impact on their status, that Homeland Security might be involved and find out, and they would have to leave the US. So if a student comes to see you, would you ever call Department of Homeland Security, or would you ever notify our office of a discussion that you're having with an international student?
No, not unless I had the student's explicit permission, right? And that we both agreed. So, and I don't see that. I've never called Homeland Security, and I wouldn't see a reason to ever, right? Whereas your office, there might be especially if I felt like, if we were talking and it felt like, well, your office could be helpful to the student, then sometimes, I could either suggest the student may want to consider going to your office without disclosing that to you, or if the student felt like they really wanted to go, and I thought, it might be helpful just to make sure that the information is clear, I would ask the student's permission and reach out to you and say, and then help explain, just to help ease that transition, but only with the student's permission and only if we both agreed.
So perfect. So when the student comes to talk to you, it's a safe space to have a frank conversation without worrying about status. Okay. Exactly. Thank you very much, Andrew. That's good for us to know.
Thanks, Michael. Any other questions? The QR code for that's, yeah, it'll just take you to our website, which is ombuds.ucr.edu. Yeah. Any other questions? I guess I would just say one final word, which is, we're one of those resources sometimes people don't think about until they really need it, right? So, so just keep us in mind if you ever run into an issue, or if you know of a friend who's run into an issue, because often it's not an office people are interacting with on a regular basis, but then when these things arise, they can have an intensive period of time that I'm working with people. So that's very common. So just encourage you to keep that in mind. And the other thing is, don't hesitate. I mean, usually people are better able to navigate the sooner or the earlier they address an issue. So please don't feel like, oh, is this issue too small? No, if it's something you're concerned about, you're wondering about, it's never too small, right? That you're the one who gets to decide whether it's too small or too big. I take all issues are important, whatever someone's bringing to the office. So don't feel like it has to reach a certain level of crisis before you reach out. So thank you again. I think Kelly, you said that if students have other questions about just pertaining to things other than the Ombuds office, you've got some opportunity to answer some of those as well, right?
Right. So thank you, Andrew, for being here today and telling us a little bit about the Ombuds office and the services that you provide. Students, if you have other questions for myself or Michael or Jenny about anything, please feel free to raise your hand or ask your question in the chat.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for being here, Andrew. We really appreciate it. Really? No, there are no questions?
I think there's a couple hands raised, it looks like.
Oh, okay. I'm not seeing them. All right.
I see.
Okay. Can you?
Oh, yes.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. So I have a question for the orientation stuff right now. Like, can I ask?
Sure.
So right now, is this orientation of the orientation part right now or not?
This is part of the international student orientation. It's just one of the sessions that we've had for international student orientation. Are you referring to the orientation as an undergraduate student that you would take in order for you to get registered for classes?
Yeah, but I just because but also like I was so busy like before, like as usually like I should like get a registration for the class like before like for the past 2 weeks, but I was trying to move to the new place to live, and also so I was so busy during that time, and so I was getting tired for myself, and I just missed orientation, and I didn't registration for the class, and the class gonna start tomorrow, and I don't know what to do for now.
Okay. Well, no problem. With regards to international student orientation, we've actually recorded a lot of the sessions, so we'll make sure we send out those recordings to you. And then for your, to get registered for your classes, what department are you in? What are you studying here at UCR?
Really?
For now, I think now is CNAS.
CNAS? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So why don't you touch base with me after this, okay? I'm going to send you an email and I'll help you get connected with your advisor in CNAS, okay?
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Pratap, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Hello, everyone. Yesterday we had an orientation of for the TAs, and they asked us to fill out some kind of performers and to sign up for their union, right? So there is some kind of fees as well to join that union as well. So is it good to join that one, or it's not recommended for us? It's like seems like official, but I'm just like slightly ambiguous to me. Should I join that one or not join that one?
It's not uncommon to have questions about joining unions, and definitely if you want to, you can join the union. You just get all the information that you can about it. A lot of our students who are teaching assistants, do that. I think they are in the union. So that's really not an uncommon question at all. It's something that's quite common in the United States, and lots of different jobs, individuals do join unions. So I think you can go ahead and do that if that's what you want to do. And feel free to talk with any one of us about it offline as well. And Michael or Jenny or Andrew, do you have anything to add?
I think questions about that we really can't advise you on. There is no immigration issue involved with this if you choose to do that or not. But what we would do is encourage you to inform yourself so you understand what it means if you join a union or any other kind of organization, so that you have a complete understanding of what you're getting involved with. But there is no immigration problem with doing that if you so choose to do that.
Right. So I understand their purpose, but I'm slightly confused. Like it's recommended or it's not recommended. That's kind of thing that I'm confused with. I really understand their purpose, but so kind of like recommended thing or not recommended thing. That's what I'm asking. So from your side, it's like up to me and understanding the whole stuff and then going with that. Otherwise, not. That's, I think, your point of view.
That would be correct.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions? Remember, there's no wrong question. You can ask anything that you would like.
Andrew, I have a question for you for Ombuds Office. So are there any types of the questions in your category that you must report to the related office or department? Are there something like that you are obligated to report to somebody else?
No. So, well, there is, the only thing I'm obligated to report is if there's an imminent threat of serious physical harm, some circumstances. So, and even there, I think I have some discretion, right, about whether I just can't promise confidentiality at that point. Doesn't mean I'm going to report it. It just means I can't. So this comes up sometimes if somebody's, either expresses some concern about like that they're going to attempt to harm themselves or somebody else, or they know of somebody who's going to do that, then or they're concerned, somebody else is going to do that, then I've got an obligation to respond to that and make sure that's being addressed. But that's really the only circumstances. And even there, I try to work. I usually know that the person who's coming to me is coming because they're trying to get it addressed. And so I'm trying to work with them to find a way of getting it addressed in a way that's going to work with them, right? So it's just, but that's where I do have an obligation to the broader community to address that. But other than that, if less, and it has to be imminent and serious physical harm. Can't just be, oh, my feelings are hurt, right? That no.
Okay.
That's the only reporting requirement.
So Andrew, would you be a confidential resource like the CARE office is on campus? Yes.
That is right. So that, yes. So confidential resource sometimes for sexual harassment or sexual violence. If most people on campus, if they hear about it, they need to notify the Title IX office about it, the Title IX director, because the campus has an obligation to take it seriously and to respond to any reports of sexual harassment or sexual violence. But there are a few offices on campus, like the CARE office is a great office for people who have experienced any sort of sexual harassment and sexual violence. You can go there and it's confidential. Similarly, the Ombuds Office is also confidential for anyone related to that, right? The CARE office is probably the best office for those concerns because they specialize in issues of sexual violence and sexual harassment, whereas I'm more of a generalist, right? People come and talk to me about anything and everything, but yes, just like them, I'm confidential for the confidential resource for concerns about sexual harassment or sexual violence. So if you come and talk to me, I'm not going to share that with anyone. I'm not required to. Yeah. Good question.
All right. Thank you so much.
Looks like there's another question, maybe, or is that already been? No, I think it's already been addressed in the chat.
Okay. Are there any other questions? And any type of question is okay if you have one. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions for today, I thank all of you for being here. I hope to see you guys at 11 o'clock. We're having a networking session, so you'll be able to meet and hear from current students who are here at UCR. And if you're an undergraduate student today at, I believe it's 2 p.m., correct me if I'm wrong, we have an undergraduate speed friending session where you can meet and interact with other new undergraduate students and kind of meet them in an informal Zoom-like setting, okay? So we look forward to seeing you all. We'll be sending out all of the recordings so that you can access them for all of the international student orientation sessions. And if you have questions about how to get connected to your academic advisor because maybe you missed one of the Highlander orientation sessions over the summer, please feel free to contact us and we'll help you make that a connection so that you can get registered for your classes. All right. I hope you all have a great day and I hope to see a lot of you at 11 a.m. Bye-bye, everyone.